Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Ren,
And I'm Payu.
and welcome to the After I Failed podcast, episode 2. So, Payu, what have you failed recently?
This isn't super recent, but I did once fail the reCAPTCHA 11 times in a row, and then I cried.
Oh no. Are you a robot? Are you AI?
I mean, I think at this point I have to ask myself that because what do you mean 11 times? It was really upsetting.
Failing reCAPTCHA 11 times. That sounds pretty AI generated.
I
What model are you
mean,
running?
the failure model 3000.
Mm, uh, let's
How about
see. I think
you?
I think I've had a bit more of a recent failure. It's a bit personal, I guess. I recently met my partner's brother. We joke around about how I would go and introduce myself to him one day, and he'd have no idea he has no idea he had no idea who I was, and doesn't know I'm dating his sister and all. So I just go to his workplace, and I just strike up a conversation, as I do because I'm a very talkative person. And I kind of you know just really kind of talk to the guy. I tell him my backstory. I give a bit of exposition. Yes, I came to Finland. I've been living here for 7 years, and all the good stuff about me. I guess more on the surface level, but about me. Now it was good. It was great. I think I think I'm pretty sure he fell in love with me, and he sees me as a potential brother as well. But like I don't get embarrassed very easily, and it's very rare for me to feel nervous about meeting somebody or like feeling embarrassed about you know some of these fun things that I do. And while I was telling
Mm-hmm.
my partner this, I was telling my partner the story about me meeting her brother, and then you know um, I I started to feel the embarrassment. Like I started to think, like, did I actually do that today? Was that me? It sounds like something I would do, but it's so ridiculous. I mean, she enjoyed it. She enjoyed the story. She was actually quite happy that I did it, so that she could tell her brother. Finally, um, but yeah, I guess I started cringing at my own actions from just like having that level of audacity to just walk in and kind of talk to my partner's brother, just like off the cuff, and then him finding out later that, oh yeah, like 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 my partner saying like, oh yeah, you met my boyfriend. I'm like, yeah, and he's like, ah, it makes sense why he would just randomly strike up a conversation in Finland.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was fun. It was fun. I saw him again actually. Went to the store again last week and wished him a happy birthday. And of course, now
Nice.
he knows. Now he knows that I'm dating his sister. I'm practically part of the family essentially, and I asked if I can get the family discount from the store. He actually
Oh
said yes. I was
no.
not expecting that.
Well, I mean, win, I
Exactly.
guess.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. Um,
that's actually so
I
funny.
I do want to share a success though, and I know
Alright.
goes against the theme of the podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
Horrible
yeah.
person. Um, just really making some bad decisions today. So I recently created the Finnish game events calendar on Luma. And this is a
Mm.
calendar in which anybody in Finland can go who's organizing game events. They can go and add their event to the calendar. Or of course DM me and I can add it as well. But the goal of this calendar is to have a single source of truth, a place where people can go and see all of the Finnish game related events uh, in Finland. In one place that's easy to access, easily accessible. People can subscribe to it and get information or updates on when new events are coming up. And this really came about because I wanted to make these events more, more inclusive, more accessible, so that someone who's not a newcomer to the industry, or somebody who's more interested in getting into the game community in Finland, can actually find out about these events and go to them and actually be part of the community as well. So please, if you're on my LinkedIn, please find that calendar post, or find it on Luma, or we can include a link to it in the description of this YouTube video as well. So yeah, it'll be there. All right then. Well, shall we jump in and introduce today's guest onto the After I Failed podcast? We have a good friend of mine, someone I met a few years back at Gamescom, which was wonderful, and she goes by the name Charly Harbord. You might know her, you might love her. Let's have her onto the stage. All right. So Charly, please introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do and why you do it.
Okay, hi. I'm Charly Harbord. I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. I started out in China doing localization, culturalization for MMORPGs, a company called IGG in Fuzhou, China. Did that. I think I'm actually still legally an employee of theirs, so I'm probably their longest running employee ever. I then went into academia, taught game design, set up a Scottish cultural heritage Gaelic game jam that lasted over 3 to 4 months, so it fitted into the school curriculum. It's now a Scottish charity called Kilt a Daughter Initiative. I then went to Global Game Jam as Director of Operations, transitioned into Director of Partnerships because that was a better fit for me. And for a very hot minute, a brief moment, I was Executive Director of Global Game Jam. And now I am Head of Business Development for Powell Group and Indie Game Business. And also many fingers in many pies, doing all kinds of little side hustles because you have to in this industry. From helping with accelerators to mentoring to I have art in games, I have narrative in games. I've done pretty much every job in industry apart from programming because my brain doesn't work that way. And I do my best to travel the world and tell people how awesome the Scottish games industry is. And I'm Scottish.
Wow. So many
Excellent.
things.
So many things, but a very long time also. And so, there's been good, there's been bad. We're currently weathering a significant storm of bad at the moment. So things do get better though.
So Charly, I'm sure you're familiar with the theme of this podcast, After I Failed. Payu, would you like to ask the next question?
Sure. So, you've been part of so many things, as you just said. So, have there been any failures?
Not a single Never. It's all been plain sailing. Yeah.
Would you like to share?
But my wonderful streamlined trajectory to excellence. Yeah, obviously there's been lots of failures. I think the most recent one, I was working on a AAA for about 3-4 years as a cultural consultant. So I also do cultural sensitivity work. So a lot of my work's been with sort of indigenous communities around the world and using games. And my own PhD research is using games to preserve indigenous languages, cultures, and traditions. So that kind of thing. So I've worked on a couple of games in that space. And we've been working on it for 4 years. So proud of it. It was coming together. Like the character I was informing on was amazing. And it's just been sunset because It's not the right time to have a game so openly DEI and inclusive and all the things that we want in the world. That was a big failure, not necessarily on my part, but in industry in general. I feel that when you put your heart and soul and you really become attached to something and it doesn't work out through external forces, that's a really hard one to come to terms with. And I think even in the job world, when you're working in a job and you get downsized or finances change and you have to move on, even if you love that job, these kind of failures are extremely hard because you can't ever pinpoint and say, well, that was me. I messed up in that particular situation. It's all of these sort of external bad forces coming together that are making it that way. And I think that's a feeling that can resonate with many people in industry right now, whether it be your game has a publisher and then 2 weeks before launch, your publisher pulls out for other reasons. The impact of these negative fails and negative feelings can be huge. And I think the only way to survive is how you deal with it and how you frame it in your head, as in it's not a personal failure. For me personally, some of the times when things have gone wrong have actually led to the very best things that have come out of it, because you're kind of backed in a corner and you have to think outside the box and think quickly, and you can end up in great opportunities through that.
Wow. You phrased that so well.
I've had a lot of time to think about it and a lot of failures to get it right in my head. And I think, failures aren't necessarily failures. I think the word failure already gives it such a negative connotation, and the feeling that if you failed, then you are at fault. So it's not necessarily failure. It's another word that I can't quite think of right now. It's kind of a new chapter, and I think that's maybe the most wonderful thing about our industry, that maybe doors do open and you do get the chance to try many different hats on in many different areas, different countries, different job titles, different skill sets. It is a lot harder now than it was back in the day. Back in the day, someone saw some of my drawings and said, do you want to put some art in my work? Can you make me a shed? I was like, yeah, sure. So now I have art in someone's game. It's a lot harder to do that now. And
Yeah.
the mental knock it can take, if someone's been fired, then you tend to look at what did I do wrong? And it could be like the company culture wasn't right, that it could be something completely out with your control that caused the issue. And we, as humans, we tend to internalize these kind of conversations with ourselves, like, what did I do wrong? And the knock to your own internal psyche when you're then going forwards for another job becomes a lot harder, because you've got this mentality of, I failed last time. How can I go into a job interview and promise you that I can do a great job because I failed at the last one? And that's something that it is extremely internalized, and it doesn't reflect on how other people think about you. And I think the thing to remember about our industry in particular, in my opinion, is that we're pretty much entirely run on your professional reputation. So it doesn't really matter who you think you are. It's what other people say about you, and more importantly, what other people say about you when you're not in the room and you're not within hearing distance. So maybe you and your boss didn't get on and that relationship ended. That doesn't mean that was your failure. There's plenty other people who will amplify you and support you and would love to work with you. So it really is that kind of the internal dialogue. You should listen to it, should deal with, your feelings, but also pay attention to what other people around you and allow that to uplift you in these moments, for sure.
that is definitely a kindness that a lot of people don't extend to themselves very often.
Every minute of kindness you spend on yourself is not a minute wasted.
Agreed.
My streamer says that all the time. I've just stolen that off her.
It's all right. But yeah, I definitely get that too. Yeah, I primarily have worked for startups for most of my life, so I mean, the situation right now is a bit different, but there was that huge startup boom maybe like 10
Mhm.
years ago, and everything was fast and loose. You'd be part of a company 1 month, be part of another company the next month, or you'd be working for multiple companies, just be doing projects all over the place. And there was money just being tossed around. Investors did not care. But you kind of get used to like, okay, this is not this is not a unicorn. It doesn't pick up speed, doesn't get traction,
Mhm.
and you kind of just get used to like, as we say in the game industry, killing your darlings.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't make you feel any better about it, but you become to some extent numb to it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And there's I think what we're dealing with now, we've been dealing with for the past what 2-3 years, is a hangover from the mad party that was COVID. And when people say, oh, game industry, we survived. No, we did not survive. We thrived because people had nothing to do but stay home and play games. And so the profits from that COVID era were astronomical compared to now because people had to start going back to work. People had to do things. And so that mentality of why are we doing so much worse? We're not doing worse. We're just not in that massive boom that was never sustainable in the first place.
mm, well, you saying that gives me a bit of confidence that things will normalize and get better. Hopefully, one day.
I've heard end of 2026 or end of Q3 2026 is when things are predicted. But yeah, predictions. Who knows?
It's okay, Charlie. I trust you completely. I'll put it on my calendar.
That's not a promise. But it's getting better. We are slowly seeing. We were slowly seeing improvement. But I think all that is happening in America right now is bound to have another potentially negative knock on, at least for American studios or America as being the primary market. It hopefully will lead to like a bigger rise of indies and more opportunities and more people peer learning, self-learning, building up great indie ecosystems and more amazing games that are coming out that are truly DEI representative and just amazing risk-taking games that AAA aren't necessarily financially able to do because the risk reward is so much of a bigger thing for AAA than it is for indies. So there's always, I'm Scottish, so we're not generally a happy people, but there is always a silver lining. There's always, it's not necessarily a failure, it's the chance for a new opportunity or to try something else.
Yeah, I think really the more representative games are super important, especially right now when so many voices are actually being pushed back, and like there's a real need for them. So it's really sad to hear that the project didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real shame. And, I was only a consultant on it, so I wasn't a huge part of it by any means. But, my heart went out to these people that have been slogging away for like 4 or 5 years on an amazing game. I mean, I probably would never play it. It's not my style of game, but it would be awesome. However, that's your life's, well, not life, but your last 4 years of work essentially gone in the bin. That's a really bitter pill to swallow. And even me, on my CV, it was games worked on, NDA, AAA game as such and such a role. I can still have that on there, but I can't really say what the game was. So it just seems like it's not a lie, but you're like, okay, NDA. No, it's real, I promise. But it's a lot for someone to have that. I've really felt for the people, and I think in terms of failure, that just being a consultant on it and being really proud of the character and the way it shaped after them listening to feedback and all of that, and the way we worked together was wonderful, and that was really hard for me. But thinking about how it was hard for the artists, the coders, everyone else involved, the designers, the narrative designers, that's a much harder thing for them to deal with, I think.
It's, I mean, we know, I mean, game development itself is a passion industry, and when you're doing it for a very specific purpose, it can really hurt when this purpose is not also appreciated by the industry that you work in, that you have invested so many years being part of.
And then the other thing is that it's not. We don't work a 9-to-5 job. No matter what job you do in game industry, it's not a 9-to-5, 5 days a week. Yes, crunch culture should never be celebrated or the norm, but there are periods of crunch, and it's how studios and companies manage that crunch that makes the difference. Just buying someone a pizza and expect them to work over a weekend is not the right way to do it. But we do have moments. So, for example, conferences, they're like 18-hour days. It's never a 9-to-5. And so you've invested a lot of your life and your own headspace and your personal life in these things, and to have it not work out can be really upsetting. So I can't even imagine how the guys on the team felt about it.
I like what you said about looking at failures and the way that we internalize them, and these sort of things that happen in the workplace, that when the game doesn't work out. Yes, of course, this was an external reason with the industry not accepting this kind of game. It's a game with this message. Now, was it just a one day? We're not doing this anymore. Everything's done. Or were there like challenges that popped up? Were there complaints? Were there people actually protesting this game?
No, because it was all NDA and top secret. So it was just a one day. Yep, no, we're not doing this anymore. Like the rug properly away, which is my livelihood didn't depend on it. It was a side hustle, but there were a significant number of people in the studio specifically set up for that game, who just overnight their lives completely ruined, and 5 years of their life's work essentially flushed down the toilet, which is sucks. And I don't think "suck" is a strong enough word for it. Like I said, I mean, every time I've been in the situation of a failure, and I think this is another distinction, when you can start to smell an impending failure, when you can start to smell that things are going wrong, and you get that feeling, you get the vibe, that's actually what's always pushed me to be my most creative. So I started the Kilted Altar Scots Gaelic Cultural Heritage Game Jam because things weren't great in my workplace, and I could feel it. And so this was a positive creative outlet. I set up my own business during another period of sensing that the job wasn't going great, and the work at not necessarily the finances, but there was some undercurrent of something going on. So if you ever see me starting a business, starting a game, starting anything, you know that my work life is pretty poop, and it's a creative outlet. Or if I'm like, yeah, sorry, I didn't get your call because I was busy doing art on the computer, that's when things have really turned to poop, because I find it really, and it's not necessarily the best catalyst to be artistic and creative, to have everything fall around you. So, and then you can be creative. But for me, it works, and it puts me in a really good headspace because it's one little positive piece of agency you can have in a situation where you essentially have no agency in what's happening around you. And I think that personally for me works really, really well.
Hmm. Right. It's that idea of, I guess, creativity, having control of the situation, in a situation which you otherwise wouldn't have control, because if you did, it probably wouldn't tank so much.
Exactly. And I think when you're feeling so you're in a situation that you're not happy in, or you can sense that there's unhappiness or negativity or something going wrong, or the stank of impending failure around you, that agency for you to be able to do something that you're in control of and that you can, it stops you feeling so helpless. Like you're doing something positive, you're doing something good for your mind, you're doing something that can help take you away from just sitting and feeling depressed and overthinking all of the different permutations of what might happen, because until the hammer drops you never actually know. You have to keep busy. And I think, particularly in the current state we're in, if someone does lose their job, going straight into another job is really hard. It's really hard to leave one situation and go directly into another job. However, I'm a huge supporter of the foot in the door mentality. So someone can offer you a little bit of commission work. If an opportunity comes, you've got the headspace to do it. You're in the right mental space to do it. You've got the bandwidth, you've got the time. Take these opportunities because, doing a little bit of work with someone, being successful at that, first off, keeps you busy and stops you being depressed because you've lost your job. Secondly, gives you some money because the very sad fact is most game devs are about 1 or 2 months away from being homeless because we don't do things like savings. That's what grown-ups do, and we aren't generally grown-ups. But thirdly, don't cry, Ren. Thirdly, if you do that work, you do it well, you get on with the team, these can often transition into better positions or personal recommendations for you to work with someone else. Or I've had it before where someone said, look, we can't hire you at the moment, but we really like what you do. However, my friend's studio is hiring, or my friend's company is hiring. Let me do an introduction.
I mean, that's fantastic and sound advice for the current industry climate.
And also, I mean, if you are doing a job that you don't necessarily enjoy or are finding problematic, doing these things for other companies, as long as it's not a conflict of interest and as long as your contract says you are allowed to do, little bits of work, usually for non-competitive companies, it can help your mental state as well. It can help you rationalize the situation and realize that maybe you're not necessarily the bad one.
I think that's very relatable for a lot of people right now in the industry who, because they may have lost their job recently, or things are sunsetting in their company, or because they feel trapped in their current positions. They it can feel like they're internalizing that failure, that they feel like they are the failure, when really it's not their fault.
And to be honest, a lot of like the layoffs and stuff that are happening now isn't necessarily down to anyone being at fault. It's down to an entirely financial issue. As I said, I know of 3-4 studios where the publishers, for financial reasons, have pulled out. I think the closest one was about 2 weeks from launch. And that's a big issue. And that wasn't the studio failing. That wasn't anyone in that studio, anyone that made that game. It wasn't the game that failed. It wasn't necessarily the publishers failed. It was a knock-on occurrence from many other things. So it's then becomes really hard to rationalize where the blame lies. And you know, you want to be angry and you want to blame someone and shake your fist at the sky or whatever. But sometimes it's just what happens. And I think, you know, we have the joy and the honor of working in an industry where our literal remit is to make fun. Like we make the experiences that people enjoy. That's a huge honor, but it also makes it very precarious because you don't know what people are going to enjoy. You can predict it, but who would have predicted Flappy Bird? Sometimes you just hit a zeitgeist, and that's why a game's successful. There's a lot of amazing games that have never made it as big as they should have, for whatever reason, but that doesn't make it a failure. I think even just one person, I mean, if I had a studio and only one person bought my game, I would be a little sad. But if that one person loved the heck out of my game, that's a win. Not a financial win, and my studio would close very quickly after. But we have to remember this is why we're doing this. It's for people to have fun.
I agree completely. And of course, one of the like when I entered the game industry, one kind of quote I guess that has been ringing in my ears all the time is that we are game developers. We create things that are fun for other people, but game development itself should also be fun.
Yes.
Otherwise, what's the point? It's a passion industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if we're not having fun making these things that are fun, why bother?
No, and I think you can definitely. So I do a lot of indie judging and support, and like indie mentorship for like young or fresh. I say young, but when I say young studios, I mean studios that have just formed, not necessarily young people. Um, and you can feel in like the vertical slice as you're playing like the different iterations on the vertical slice. You can feel when the team tensions start to come in because the gameplay doesn't feel as enjoyable. It's not as there's something that you can feel, almost feel the tension in the gameplay when a team's breaking down. And obviously, I mean, I did mention crunch, and yes, that is part of it, but not in such extreme terms as we're used to referring to crunch. But there will be times, you know, close to shipping when, or alpha or beta or gold or whatever, where you really have to knuckle down and work really hard, and maybe work longer than the hours you were originally supposed to be working. But there has to be a balance in it, and you have to have fun, and you really need a good supportive work culture, a company culture that is supportive, is can amplify, can support, can be there for people, and that makes a huge difference because a game that's made in an environment of extreme anger is generally not that much fun to play.
I can't say I've seen that too often. Games made in extreme anger, though. Again, maybe I just haven't been exposed to that. I have seen situations in which like there's tension,
Mm-hmm.
even downright yelling and frustration between management and employees, and this just results in really negative, ill feelings. People feeling trapped and wanting to leave and escape and run away,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
eventually these companies don't last very long. So
yeah, no, and there's also the other factor that I think a lot of people forget is that probably 80-90% of game industry in the creative side, we're neurodivergent. Like the vast majority of us are neurodivergent. People on the management side aren't necessarily the creatives. And so you've got a disparity in languages. You've got creatives who speak one language, and you've got management C-suite that speak a different language. And then you add in neurodiversity, And that's when tensions, misinterpretations, you know, all of these other issues can come into place. So, some of the best studios I know, there's CEOs, everyone from the top down, have all been creatives. And in fact, they miss being able to make games because now they're too busy doing meetings and spreadsheets and all the other stuff they don't care about. But they understand the same language that the actual people working on the games use. And I think that's really important in terms of DAI. It's not just about color, religion, sexuality. There's also neurodivergencies as well. And to have an understanding of being able to say, look, I'm dyslexic. If you use that font, I can't read it. Or, I have ADHD. I find it very difficult to concentrate. So if I interrupt when you're talking, I'm very sorry, but it's the way my brain works. You've said something, it's triggered something in here, and if it doesn't come out, I've forgotten it. And it was really important. And I think we have an innate understanding of each other within that creative space because we're all weird in the best way.
Preach. I think, community and teams are some of the best parts of working in the game industry, I feel like. And at least personally for me, it also makes the load of like bearing the like failures and successes easier, because for me, when we succeed together. That's not something I did. But then oftentimes I need to remind myself that if we fail, we also fail together, and it's not just something that I did or anything that maybe I could have controlled in that moment. So navigating those teams, and especially like that sense of failure in that setting, can be really difficult to learn.
Absolutely. I mean, if we keep the analogy of a studio, if you're working in a studio and your game fails, or there's a failure, short of you purposely putting a bug onto it or a virus or setting fire to the office or deleting your backups or just absolutely not doing your job, it's not you that's the failure. You might have contributed in some way to something that people didn't like in the end, but it's not your sole responsibility. And within game industry, this sense of community, we don't have work colleagues necessarily. We form really close friendships and almost chosen family with the people that we meet traveling around the world at conferences. We spend a lot of time together. And, for example, I'm in a group with several people from all different walks of life and industry. And we have a Friday whiskey lounge. So every Friday, 5:30, off goes the work email, out comes the whiskey, and we sit and we talk about exactly what you said, the highs and the lows, in a completely safe space where you can be like, well, you know what that did, without any fear of repercussions, because we've got enough mutually assured destruction on each other now by this point. But it's that trust. And, after I think I did 3 back-to-back conferences, and being neurodivergent and my social battery goes, I don't like people. I'm not a sociable person by nature. I pretend at being one, and I pretend very well. But at the end of it, my batteries are done. And so I hadn't been engaging in some of our group chats. About 10, 15 people started reaching out to me like, oh my God, are you okay? We haven't heard from you. And I'm thinking, like, I haven't spoken to my friends, like my normal people friends for years, and not a single one has gone, oh my God, are you okay? We have such tight bonds with each other in this industry that I think I don't see in any other industry at all. There's people you can rely on if you're ever in trouble, or you're feeling depression, or you're unhappy with your situation and you want to be able to talk about it with someone who understands what you're going through, who's maybe gone through it before, but in a way that isn't going to get you into trouble for talking about something. And I think that's something really, really special about the industry we work in. It is these really tight bonds, and those bonds go two ways, where you can lift and support the people around you, but also they do that for you. And I think it is really a beautiful thing. And in terms of failure, bringing it back to the main topic, it's essential because there's a lot of failure happening all around us.
And I think it's also quite failure is something that we can all relate to, and that's kind of the reason why when Payo pitched this podcast to me, I kind of jumped on it too, because I saw this actually being really relatable for just the general public, people in the industry, people who are close to me, where every time you go to a conference or a talk, it's oftentimes somebody's success story or somebody talking about how great their company is, and never really the challenges or strains that it takes to get there, or really, what went wrong and why, and what did they learn.
Yeah. And I think, at the current state of affairs, it can be really hard, and it can be soul destroying, and it can be brutal out there. And that's why having, your industry family or industry friends around you is that essential support network that, like I said, it's someone who's either been through the exact same situation, but they also understand what you're going through. If I try and talk to my mom or my nana about what I'm going through, when I lost my job, if I try to explain to them, they can't quite understand or why I'm stressed at my job. They don't get it because they don't get why, from 8 in the morning, sometimes till midnight, I'm working. Because, I've had a call with Japan and now I'm talking to America. This is my job. This is what I do. That just seems very stressful. You should get another. But it's not stressful. It's amazing. Yes, the conference travel, the social battery goes down, but it also gives me life. Like, I love going to these events, seeing, new games, new studios, seeing what's happening in the industry, being there to support friends who are going through not necessarily the best times, but also having them support me when I'm not going through the best times. And, if we didn't fail, we would never move on to the next thing. And I guess if you think about it, when you first went on a bicycle, you didn't get on it and just ride perfectly. You fell off several times. And that's kind of, you've got to pick yourself up. You've got to get back on, keep putting yourself out there, and still engage with that environment and the industry in that way.
Yeah, I think that just the emphasis on community is just a wonderful sentiment, because there's so many folks who are losing their jobs because the industry is going under, and the best thing we can do as a community is to support each other. We all know what it's like.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think I know a single person who's been in the same job for all of their life. Like, it just doesn't happen. I think generally there's like a 4-year turnover, whether you're moving on to a better opportunity or you're not, whether you've had to be let go or you quit or whatever. There's around a 4-year. I know people who've been, with places a lot longer, but I don't know a single person who's only ever stayed in one company. That's unless it's their own company. But it's rare, and I think that's something to bear in mind. Everyone has lost their job at some point. There's no shame in it. It doesn't make you unemployable. It doesn't make you untouchable, and you should not feel. I mean, unless you did something like set the office on fire, then absolutely you should be fired. But like I said, often it's external circumstances that have caused a need for letting staff go. And that's not necessarily something you should take on yourself. And every single person has been through this at some point, sometimes more than once.
Okay. So do you have any unhelpful advice? Because we don't give helpful advice on our podcast, actually. For the people listening or watching.
Yeah, I mean, I think all advice is either helpful or unhelpful depending on how you choose to listen to it. Obviously, play more games, spend more time playing games, which then interferes with actually doing the work and doing the creativity. Don't give a shit about what other people say. I have spent my whole life not caring if people like me or not, because I have enough good friends. And if you don't like me, that's your problem. It has zero impact on my life. So, yeah, literally don't worry about what other people think about you in terms of trying to make everyone like you. Just do you and fly your freak flag and be fabulous, I guess. That was vaguely helpful, though.
Depends on the freak flag, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I'm not saying wear a gimp suit to a conference. I've killed Ren.
I'm just imagining it, like just somebody walking in a gimp suit at a game developer conference. And
oh God, can you imagine the smell, the sweat, the smell? Oh.
To be honest, I feel like people would just quickly accept it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Don't worry, that's just Ted. That's what he does.
I'm
trying to think if I do have any unhelpful advice.
I mean, have you gotten any unhelpful advice?
Oh
that was
my
really
God,
unhelpful.
So much. I'm trying to think of the last one. I think the point of advice, whether it be helpful or unhelpful, first off depends if the person actually understands the situation. But secondly, depends on whether you actually need help and or advice. So I was teaching, it was during COVID, so I was teaching game design online at the university. So all our classes were online and we were using Microsoft Teams, and Teams decided that it was going to play up. And some of the students hadn't got themselves into teams. And so we said to them, like, if you haven't formed like groups of 3, use the hands up signal and we can put you in. And then the symbol wasn't working. So it's like, oh, you know what? Don't worry. I was saying, like, just pop your name in the chat. And then an 18-year-old boy, now bearing in mind, I'm 50, an 18-year-old boy started telling me how to use Teams because I am a woman. And having Teams mansplained to me was so, yeah, I mean, that was bad advice. And I think, saying, well, considering I'm the one teaching you and I'm also the one going to be marking your final assessment, do you want to rein that back in a bit? Unhelpful advice has been when someone said, no, don't do that. And then I've gone ahead and done it anyway. And it worked out fine. Suck it and see. Can you imagine? This is me sober.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. It's excellent. In fact, we'll wrap up the episode. This has been actually quite wonderful. But before we do, I would like to ask, let's end this on a high note. What's a recent success you may have had?
Okay, so this is a high note and also kind of a plug, I guess. We, considering the horrific state of affairs, particularly in US with DEI and things like that, Women in Games and supported by IGDA, we are running a 24-hour charity stream in honor of the Trevor Project. All proceeds will go to Trevor Project, 100%. We're supported by amazing studios like CDPR, Frozen Distance, makers of House Flippers. We've got a whole roster of amazing games that we will be playing. We will be opening with devs from CDPR playing either Cyberpunk or one of the Witchers and talking about the queer stories in there. We have devs from Frozen Distance joining. It's going to be an amazing, wonderful event that everyone should watch. And if you can contribute, you can. We'll also be giving away hundreds of Steam keys for amazing games, Xbox keys, Switch keys. And it's just going to be a whole celebration of awesomeness and a huge antidote to all of the absolute dumpster fire that's happening in the world right now. So I think that's a pretty damn positive thing.
This sounds huge and fantastic. When and where?
June 28th to 29th from 3 o'clock EST until 3 o'clock EST on Women in Games Twitch. WIGJ Twitch. And based on the previous charity streams that I've run, the first one was supposed to be 12 hours. It went on for 13. Second was 24. It went for 26. Third was 26. 24 went on for 20. We're going to probably be on for like 30 hours. It's going to be a wild time.
Oh, yeah. Love to see it. Love it when these
We
massive
are
events.
still looking for streamers, moderators, because obviously we need to make sure we are moderating very carefully because we'll be going live on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Discord. So anyone that wants to volunteer, any studios that want to donate keys for the streamers and or keys to give away to the audience and join streams, we're happy to have anyone and everyone join.
We'll put a link to it in the description as well.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you.
But yes, this was very insightful. Like I learned so much, and I felt touched for a lot of it. Like so relatable in the current game industry climate. You know, dealing with the layoffs, with the internalized failure as well, and processing it all, and of course the focus on community and having a supportive group of people.
It's essential because our work keeps us so far away from normal life that these are the people we spend our lives with, and having that support from people who know exactly what you're going through and can actually understand is really hard and lonely if you don't have that behind you.
Oh yeah, all of this massively hits close to home, and I'm really glad that we've had you on this podcast, Charlie, on this episode. You have been absolutely wonderful.
Okay, I'm glad. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Always great to talk to Charlie. Wonderful to have her on the podcast. She shared a lot of excellent insights onto the current game industry and what it's like working in the game industry right now. I think my biggest takeaway was the importance of community and to be kind to yourself. I think that's something we can all do a little bit more of. But looks like we should definitely wrap it up and call it an episode. Payu, would you like to walk us out of here?
Sure. So that's it for episode 2 of the After I Failed podcast. Check out the games calendar, the Finnish games calendar, game events calendar, that one. I should also check it out. I will go do that after this. And check out Charly and everything that she's doing and up to, and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.